Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to stick to Scotland, and we're also going to stick to my home county of Clackmannanshire, right in the middle of the country. Now for this review we are going to return to one of my local breweries, and they've featured on the channel many times before. I've had some really nice beers from them over the years, a good few different styles, but if people were to ask me about this brewery, I would say that they're most well known for their different kinds of kind of lighter, golden, sessionable type beers, but they have got a number of historic recipes as well, which are also very, very well respected. But the beer we're going to have a look at today is one of their more special releases, I guess we could say. It's one of the strongest beers that I'll ever have had from these guys, and it is quite an interesting one, I have to say. So needless to say, I'm very, very curious to see what this beer is going to have in store for us. Hopefully it's another good beer, hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head a couple of miles down the road from me to Alloa, and that means that we're going to have a look at yet another beer from the wonderful Williams Brothers Brewing Company. So this one is the 2022 barrel-aged version of Alba. So this one comes in at 11% ABV, and this is an Islay whiskey barrel-aged rich tawny spruce and pine ale. So yeah, this should be really quite interesting. This of course is one of the two 30th anniversary beers that Williams Brothers released fairly recently. We already reviewed the Freya Heather Ale 2022 barrel aged edition for my channel's 10th anniversary reviews, and this one is a kind of continuation of the Crazy Beers for 10 Years mini-series that I'm doing over the next little while. But yeah, this should hopefully be interesting. We did try the Alba on the channel a good few years ago, and it was quite an interesting beer. I really did enjoy that one. So to try a kind of bigger, bolder and barrel-aged version of this, I think should be really quite interesting. So yeah, let's crack on with this one then and see what the beer has in store for us. As always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Williams Brothers Brewing Company before, and we will no doubt add some more to that list at some point in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated, and remember you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer using the geography tagging system. So just go down there, use the little search bar, put in your hometown, state, county, whatever you like. If I've reviewed beers from the area that you search for, they will pop up. Failing that though, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the Scottish playlist along with a number of other things, and that is of course being added to quite regularly at the moment actually. But yeah, let's go on to my brewery notes then, and I'll tell you a wee bit more once again about Williams Brothers Brewing Company. So Williams Brothers Brewing Company's story goes back to the family-owned Glenbrew home brewing shop through in Glasgow. So the first ale that was released as part of their kind of brewing activities, if you like, was one that was inspired by a 17th century Gaelic recipe for the ancient Freya Heather Ale, and it's named of course after the Celtic mythological hero of the same name. But in 1988 a woman of Gaelic descent came into their brew shop with a translation of this recipe into English, and she basically wanted to create a batch of this beer to share with her family, and she agreed that she would share the recipe with Bruce Williams in exchange for help brewing the batch. But a small batch of only 5 barrels was produced in Taynilk railway station out near Oban on the Scottish west coast, and they sold this in a few pubs locally. But the following year demand for this beer had increased massively just because people started talking about this, and they really liked it. But at this point Bruce Williams started to think, you know, maybe we should actually think about making our own brewery, and then his brother Scott joined him in 1989, and they began to develop other historic recipes such as the Groatsit Gooseberry Wheat Ale, the Kelpie Seaweed Ale, the Ebelum, which is an elderberry black ale, and also the original version of this, the Alba Scots Pine Ale. So the official start date of Williams Brothers Brewing is listed as 1992, and these 4 recipes were produced originally at the Maclay Brewery in Alloa, but then they also produced them at the Craigmill Brewery in Strathaven, or Straven as it's known, which was actually built by Williams Brothers, and they were there between 1998 and 2004. But in 2004, the company relocated to their current base at the Fourth Brewery in Kellybank in Alloa, and it was at this point that they officially adopted the name Williams Brothers Brewing Company, because I think legally the company is known as Heather Ales Limited, if I'm not mistaken. But oddly enough, they're the last brewery in the old brewing capital of Scotland, and over the years they've built up the capacity of this brewery to be 100,000 hectolitres of beer per year. But they do plan to build a new facility next to the current site that they have, and this one is going to have a capacity of 200,000 hectolitres of beer per year. But these days the brewery is run by Chris Williams, who is Bruce's son, and Scott is still involved in the company as well. But like I said to you earlier, these guys are known for their kind of lighter, more sessionable beers, if you like. Probably the most well-known one would be the Joker IPA. That's a very, very popular one. And my personal favourite actually is the Caesar Augustus, which they call a lager IPA hybrid. It is basically I guess you could call it an IPL, to be honest with you. But yeah, it's a very, very nice beer, that one. Another favourite of mine was always Pavlov's Dog, which was a little bit more of a kind of malty thing. And March of the Penguins is a lovely lower ABV stout, actually, if you're into that sort of thing. But yeah, they've got some really, really nice, really very nice kind of lighter, more sessionable beers, these ones. And Williams Brothers, of course, do kind of straddle the line between being a little bit traditional and Scottish, and also being a bit more bold and American. They've got their tall boy cans these days as well, which are the kind of bigger, more bold American style beers. But yeah, that is everything I can really tell you about Williams Brothers Brewing Company for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can of course check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's go on to have a little look at the beer itself. So I'll just let you have a wee look at the artwork on this one before we open up. There you can see lovely, I think this is meant to be the annual rings of a tree or something like that in the artwork. It looks pretty cool, but there you can see Alba, which is of course the Gaelic word for Scotland, and I guess that must be a reference to the fact that I guess they're using Scots pine needles in this one, actually, or Scotch pine I should say. But yeah, it tells you a little bit about the beer on the side here. It says the barrel-aged Alba, spruce and pine Viking ale brewed in 2011 to an imperial strength, specifically to be wood-aged in Scottish whisky casks from the Isle of Isla's finest distilleries. Each year, a limited number of barrels are specifically selected and blended to create a unique expression. Alba's classic character of spruce, resin and malt is married with peat and oak while maturing in single malt Isla casks. So yeah, kind of interesting, this one. It says pine sprigs and spruce sprigs have been put into this one, so I guess it's just little branch cuttings or whatever. But yeah, this one comes in at 11% ABV, so it is a little bit of a monster. And like I said to you, this is one of the two beers that Williams Brothers Brewing released to celebrate their 30th anniversary. I think I paid like £17 for this bottle. I'm sure it was like 34 that I paid for the two of them actually. But you know, it was one of these kind of fuck it why not moments, because it's definitely cool that for my channel 10th anniversary I can have a little look at some of the really some of the 30th anniversary beers from Williams Brothers Brewing. But you can see on the side of the bottle there is the Williams Brothers Brewing Company symbol, which is lovely, that old kind of Celtic thing, and you can see they've got a lovely sort of wax top in this. I'm not sure how many bottles they actually released of this one, but still quite lucky to be able to review this for you here on the channel. But let's get it out into the glass then and see what it's all about. I'm very, very curious about this beer. Like I said, just need to see if we can actually get into the thing. I'm hoping that I don't have to pause the video here, but we'll just need to see. There we go. Got ya. Yeah. Sometimes with these wax tops it can be very difficult to get into them, but yeah, we have gotten into this one quite nicely. So you can see a little bit of smoke on the opening there as we open up the bottle. But let's get some of this out into the glass and see what it's all about. Oh, this does look nice. I'm going to try and get a little bit ahead on this. I think that does look really very nice actually. So, yeah, there you go. That was good. Let me just line that up so my OCD is happy. But yeah, if I shine the light through this beer, it does have a really nice kind of deeper colour to it. Before the head disappears on this one instantly, you can see that it's poured with about a half finger of a frothy, I would say kind of lovely fawn cream coloured head there. You can see there's some medium sized bubbles at the top of the liquid there, and some foamier ones just going a little bit further up, but it's got quite a bumpy head the further up from the liquid that you go. But if we shine the light through this one, you can see that it actually has, it's a bit difficult to distinguish whether it's got a little touch of like a ruby hint to it, because it also has like a very deep sort of amber colour. I think to you guys on the camera it's appearing as if it's a little bit like a kind of stained mahogany or something like that. But yeah, the colour of this one looks absolutely lovely. Yeah, one or two big bubbles sticking toward the side of the glass with this one, a few little ones going up toward the bottom of the head, but the head has incidentally just faded away to be a really kind of thin foamy layer with a bit of a bubbly ring around the edge of it there. But interesting colour of this one, I have to say. So yeah, they talk about it being tawny, like a dark kind of red copper is probably a good way to describe the colour of this one as well. But remember, the colour of your beer depends on a few things. One, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. Two, length of your wort boil is also going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. Any barrel aging that you do or adjuncts you put into the beer will affect its colour too. But yeah, in the case of this one, I'm not exactly sure how much the whisky barrel aging will affect the colour of it, but in theory, the lighter the beer, the more the beer is susceptible to having its colour altered by barrel aging and so on. A little touch of a kind of natural haze to this one. It's not a completely see-through beer, even if we wipe away the little bit of condensation around the edge of the glass there. But yeah, it kind of looks as you would expect, to be honest with you. Yeah, I don't know if we can really say very much more about the appearance of this beer. I think we can just have a little look at this and see what it's all about. I'm very, very curious about this one. So let's do this. Let's have a little look at the aroma. Oh, yeah, that's very nice. I tell you something, that's a lovely, lovely smelling beer. I'll say straight away, I actually like the aroma of this one a bit more than I did with the Freyich, and I wanted to review the Freyich for the 10th anniversary beer because it is the it is one of the oldest beer styles in the world, and it's also a Scottish style too. That was one of the main reasons why I wanted to do that one. But I have a feeling that out of the two beers, I can see this going along the lines of me enjoying this one a little bit more than Freyich, just from the aroma, but we'll just need to see how that plays out. But yeah, this beer is really interesting. You can smell the lovely Alba barrel in there. You've got a lovely little bit of maltiness to it, a little bit of fruitiness as well, and you have got that fresh kind of piney resinous type quality to it that you would expect from the name and knowing what adjuncts are actually used in the thing. So yeah, I think we can take a closer look at this aroma and just actually describe it a bit more in depth. So for me, the backbone of this beer, it has, it's got a lovely sort of, you can smell just the oaky character coming out of this beer. So for me, as I've said on the channel many a time before, European oak has a little bit more dryness to it for me than the American, than the kind of American sort of, the American kind of smooth vanilla type oaky characters. You can really notice that difference here. So yeah, you've got that lovely kind of slightly dry oaky backbone in the base of that middle third of your palate there, which is great, or in the middle of your nose, I should say that. But on top of that, you're getting the spirit, and I'd be curious to know what barrels they've used in this one, because you get a little bit of everything from this. For me, when it comes to Islay whiskies, and this is an obvious thing, they are obviously all smoky, but it varies. The degree of smokiness you get from them can vary a little bit. You've got Ardbeg and Lefroy at one end of the spectrum, which are really dry and almost roasty kind of smokiness, but at the other end of the spectrum you have for example, Alba, which is quite a dry and sweet and brown sugary kind of smokiness. And then you've got the likes of Bowmore, which is a bit more kind of grassy in its smokiness. So yeah, this beer, in terms of the spirit that you're getting out of this one, you're getting quite a little bit of everything from the whiskey in this one. So I'm guessing that they're using a few different Islay whiskey casks in there, because I am getting a little bit of grassiness within the spirit. I'm getting a little bit of the kind of drier and toastier brown sugars, and then I'm also getting the kind of drier smokiness and oakiness coming out of the beer too. So yeah, the way that this beer goes together, I think, is really very, very nice. So for me, the spirit and the wood in this one are really interesting. They complement the kind of the pine ale really quite well, in a sense. They just add a little bit more depth to it. As it's been quite a while since I had Alba. It's a good few years, I would say. It would have been quite interesting to do a side sip, with Freya and with this one. I probably should have tried to get a bottle of each of the original beers and compared them a little bit. That could have been quite interesting. But yeah, I mean, for me, on top of the spirit, you're getting quite a few little things. There's a lovely sort of there is a lovely kind of bready character to this one. You've got a nice little bit of a kind of brown bready, wholemeal brown bready sort of thing. On top of that, you've got a little bit of I would say. On top of that, you've got the bread crust in there. You've got the kind of brown bready characters, and then you start to get some of the brown sugary notes out of the beer, which is really interesting. So for me, the brown sugars, it is a little bit like a toasty caramel, a bigger oily caramel, some nice biscuity notes in there too. And then yeah, the way that this one goes together in that particular regard is really very nice. So that gets a big thumbs up from me too, actually. Yeah, I like that. I do like that about this one. So yeah, for me, the malty side of this beer, yeah, brown bread crust, a kind of wholemeal brown bready character, then the sweeter notes above that. You've got a little bit of a toasty brown sugar in there, a bit of a sweeter caramel, like I said. You do get a few elements of nuttiness coming out of this one, but the thing is, in the top of the nose, you can smell the sort of pine needles, spruce needles, all the spruce tips and things like that. You do just get this kind of piney, resinous freshness on top of all these notes that I'm mentioning to you, and that's really, really interesting. When it comes to the kind of green component of this beer, for me, obviously this beer is barrel aged. It's not going to be a massively hop forward beer when you've got the kind of spruce and pine needles and stuff in there, but you do still get a little bit of the green component of the hop in there. There's a little bit of earthiness. There's a little bit of a kind of herbally character too, but I'm getting quite a little bit of nice kind of floral aromaticity and grassy zestiness on the front of the nose. So the way that this beer goes together in that particular regard is really very, very nice. So yeah, the way that this beer goes together, I think, is really interesting from that perspective too. Yeah, they just having that little bit of green component in there, which gives a wee bit more kind of depth to the kind of pine resin and the piney and the spruce notes. Just adds a little bit more to the beer. So yeah, really interesting stuff. So for me, the fruity side of the beer, then, just to round that off, it's quite interesting too. I mean, the fruity side of things, it's got a big oily kind of peary character to it. So yeah, big oily peary notes. You have that little bit of lovely big kind of oily peary notes. A little bit of sultana as well. There's maybe a tiny little hint of a red fruity nose in the top, a red fruity note in the top of the nose. I remember the Freya having a sort of the Freya having a kind of like sharper, reddy, citricy kind of note to almost a little bit of a wild ale type quality, which I was a bit worried about. But this one has a teeny little bit of that in the top of the nose. But yeah, mainly oily pear, a little bit of sultana, and there's a wee bit of something else going on, just a tiny little hint of like black currant or something like that. So yeah, aroma wise, quite an interesting beer, I have to say. So yeah, lovely stuff in fact. So I think we can leave it at that for the aroma. As I always say though, take a bit of time to just enjoy the aroma of the beer before you get stuck into it, especially when you're having a look at something that's quite as unusual as this beer obviously is. So yeah, let's do this. Let's have a look at it and see what it's all about. This is the Alba Expression 2022 30-year anniversary barrel aged edition, whatever you want to call it, from Williams Brothers Brewing Company, one of my local breweries here in Clackmannanshire in central Scotland. A spruce and pine needle tip, whatever you want to call it, infused tawny ale. So yeah, let's taste this one. Coming in at 11% ABV. This is going to be a monster. Slàinte, skål, cheers. Ooh, that is nice. That is really very, very nice. Yeah, it's a pretty awesome beer. That very unusual, very, very unique. So if you do get the chance to try this one, I really would recommend that you have a look at it. This is absolutely lovely. But yeah, this is right up my street. I knew that out of this, as soon as I smelt this beer, I was like, this is one that I'm really, really going to enjoy. And I've certainly been proven correct in that little hypothesis that I had. And I will say straight away that I do personally think this one, just for my taste, I think it's both the better beer of the two out of the 30th anniversary ones, and I think it's also the one that I personally like better as well. So from the technical perspective of the aging and so on, I think this beer is just more rounded, and I really do like how that goes together in this one. Yeah. So yeah, for me, the way this beer is around you is lovely. You've got a bit of sweetness to it, you've got a bit of dryness and the woodiness and stuff the further into the aftertaste you go. You've got a nice green component to it, and you've got a lovely oily fruity note coming out of this. So yeah, let's just break this beer down and describe it the way that we always do. Middle third of your palate then, you can feel the backbone of this beer is that lovely, smooth and slightly dry European oak. The way that that goes together is really, really very, very nice. So yeah, lovely, smooth European oak in there. It does have a little bit more dryness and things the further back you are on that middle third of your palate, and it smoothens out a little bit more the further forward you go. Remember that general trend with your palate that more dry and bitter flavours will come out further back on the palate, sweeter flavours will come out further forward. But yeah, so we've described the barrel quite nicely in this one, I would say. And then on top of the wood, you do of course start to get the spirit. And the spirit for me is really interesting because you can taste within that. It's got this lovely kind of oily layer, but you can taste within that you have a really nice kind of you have a very nice sort of just oily character coming out of this one. It really is great actually. So for me, from that perspective, the kind of the spirit has, you do get a little bit at the back. It's kind of interesting because you can feel the spectrum of the spirit. Like at the back of that middle third of your palate, you get the more dry, ashy side of the Islay whiskies, you know, the Lafroigs, the Lafroig, the Ardbegs of this world. Then as you move further forward from that, you get the more kind of brown sugary, you get a little bit of the more kind of brown sugary, sweeter Islay whiskies, you know, the likes of Cal Islay, Kilhaman as well. And then as you move further forward toward the front of that middle third of your palate, inside the spirit layer, you're getting a wee touch of the more grassy type Islay whiskies, the likes of the Bowmore and things like that. It's really interesting to see. So they've obviously, it's quite obvious from the spirit layer in the flavour of the beer that they've used a good few different Islay whisky casks in this one. I can't remember how many distilleries there are on Islay these days, but yeah, it's really nice. I think it's about 9 or 10 distilleries on Islay, but this is absolutely lovely stuff in terms of the barrel. You'll find that you get more and more of the dryness out of the spirit layer in this one coming out the further into the aftertaste that you go. You get more and more of the kind of Ardbeggy and Lafroigy type Islay flavours on this one into the aftertaste. And some of the Cal Islay sort of sweet ones linger there too, which is really interesting. But yeah, above that spirit layer you actually start to get the different aspects of the beer itself. So for me, above that spirit layer you do have a little bit of a kind of rye bready, bread crusty character. Then you've got the rye bready layer, and on top of that you get a more, on top of that rye bready layer you start to get a bit more of a kind of wholemeal, brown bready note to the beer too, which I think is great. So yeah, for me, that side of the beer does go together really, really very nicely. On the, as I say, you've got that rye bready bread crust, a bit of a rye bready layer, kind of sweet in a sense, then a wholemeal brown bready layer on top of that, and you start to get more of the, you do start to get a little bit more of the, kind of brown sugary aspects of the beer above that. Within the bread, it's kind of interesting. You do have a little bit of an almost kind of pine needly layer between on the top of the bread. It's kind of like the wholemeal layer is the wholemeal brown bready layer is a little bit more. The wholemeal kind of brown bready layer feels as if it has the pine needles and spruce tips and stuff just infused inside it, and I do really like how that pieces together for sure. So for me, on the brown sugary layers are quite interesting in this beer too. So you can feel above the kind of wholemeal brown bready character, you've got a lovely little bit of that toasty brown sugar in there. So you can feel that little bit of a toasty brown sugar there. Above that, you've got a nice kind of dry and slightly leathery type brown sugary character out of this one. And then, I don't think this beer's had a particularly longer wort ball. Usually leathery flavours are a signal or an indicator of a longer wort ball. I don't think that's the case in this particular instance. But yeah, roasty, toasty brown sugars, a kind of leathery brown sugar. And then in the dead centre of your palate, you have a nice kind of, you do have a nice little bit of a kind of, you've got a nice little bit of a sort of Werther's Original butter candy type thing, and then a wee bit of straight caramel. This beer covers its alcohol very, very well, to be honest with you. It doesn't have that kind of it gives you a little bit of a warming sensation in the chest later into the aftertaste, but the actual flavour and things covers the alcohol really nicely. It's a very, very smooth beer. But at that, I think we've covered the middle third of your palate in this beer quite well, and that's where the majority of the complexity in this beer actually is, in my opinion. So yeah, let's go on to the back third of your palate then. As I've often said, the back third of your palate will give you similar flavours to the middle third of your palate. They'll just come out at different intensities, to be honest. So The border region between middle and back third of your palate, you get a little bit of the kind of rye bready character in the base, and then a bit of a more wholemealy brown bready character sitting above that. Then you have a nice you have the nice woody dryness in there, which feels a little bit drier on that back third of your palate. You can feel the whiskey spirit layer there too, and it's kind of a mix mainly of the kind of Cow Isla meaty, dry, yeah, almost meaty, peaty type qualities, but then you get a bit of the drier, more roasty, ashy type peaty character, the Lafroig or Ardbeggy type thing further back. But then above that, again, you get you get a bit of the rye bready bread crust. Then you get the rye bready layer, which feels a little bit lighter and more airy, and then you get the wholemeal kind of brown bready layer, which feels a little bit lighter and more airy. And then on top of that, you get the drier, more leathery kind of brown sugars just creeping over the top of it, which is really nice. So, on top of that, you have a really nice kind of, on top of that you start to get some of the yeasty characters coming out of the beer. And the yeasty side of things is really quite nice in this beer. For me, it has the yeasty character that comes out. You've got this more dense, slightly sweet wholemeal kind of brown bready character in there. It's got a little bit of woodiness and a little bit of nuttiness to it, and it feels as if it's wrapped in like a kind of honeycomb type thing. But you can feel some of the kind of piney, resinous, spruce tippy type needles out of this one. I think we didn't really mention too much of the spruce tip and kind of pine needly sort of thing that this beer has, but you do. It's kind of like it sits on top and it's infused into the bread, and it just comes out a little bit more the further into the aftertaste you go. It feels as if it's kind of lingering there. You know that sort of feeling that you get, that feeling of freshness you get after you've brushed your teeth? It's kind of like that. You get just a little aftertaste of the kind of spruce tips and pine needles, or whatever it actually is in this one they've used. I forget the word, sprigs I think they called it. But yeah, the back third of your palate, though, the flavour is definitely taller, and as you come further forward into the middle third of your palate, it kind of condenses down and just squashes together. But as I say, it's a lovely, lovely beer, this one, and it gets a big thumbs up from me. Yeah. So, from that perspective, I would say the malty, barrel and yeasty side of the beer has been covered, so we should look at the hoppy side of things. Now remember, when you barrel age beer, a lot of the hoppy character is going to drop out, and you know, obviously this beer is not going to be the most hop forward style of beer, as I've said, but you do still get a little bit of a green component out of this one. In the back corners of the palate, you've got a lovely little bit of earthiness in there, and as you move further forward, you've got a little touch of herbal character, and as you push toward that kind of the front corners of your palate, you can feel you do get a little bit of floral aromaticity and a little bit of the kind of piney, resiny type flavours that come out of this one are also really quite nice. So yeah, the way this beer goes together is really interesting. Round the front curve of the palate, you've got a little bit of a lighter, more grassy sort of thing coming out of it, which I think is great. And yeah, that just adds a little bit more zestiness to the beer, which builds a good bridge with the kind of spruce tippy, pine needly type vibe that the beer has, that becomes a little bit more prominent the further into the aftertaste that you go. But yeah, the green component, it's quite smooth and quite wet and oily in a sense. So yeah, I like that. But let's have a wee look at the let's have a little look at the fruity side of things in this beer, in the front third of your palate. So, for me, the fruity side of this beer is really quite nice. On that front third of your palate, then the border region between front third and middle third of your palate, you do get a nice little bit of bready build up in there again. There's a wee touch of a kind of rye bready note to it. You've also got a more kind of wholemeal brown bready character in there sitting on top of it. Then the base of that front third of your palate is quite nice. So you get the woody layer once again. You can feel that nice kind of woody smoothness, and it's really quite smooth and almost slightly sweet on the front third of your palate. Above that you get the kind of spirity layer, and at this point the spirit layer is very much like a kind of bright kind of brown sugary and slightly grassy. You know, it's really leaning toward the Bowmore and has a little touch of that Carlisle type character to it, and above that you get a wee bit of the bread crust and the kind of sweeter aspects of the brown bread, but then you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. So let's have a little look at those juicy fruity notes that this beer has. And yeah, for me, the fruity side of this beer is really interesting. It has a slight touch of red fruity character to it, but it has, you know, the kind of typical notes, the sort of peary and sultana type notes that I would have expected from the aroma. So at the back of that front third of your palate, you do get this nice kind of sultana, dry, white green gravy character coming out of it, which I think is great. So yeah, really like that about this one. On top of that, you do have, on top of that, you've got a really nice, as you move further forward, you get more of a kind of oily, peary type note out of this one. So kind of an oily, peary character right in the middle of that front third of your palate. And as you move into the kind of front half of that front third of your tongue, you've got a lovely sort of like black curranty type, you've got a kind of black curranty type base, and above that you can feel the kind of oiliness of the pear just creeping forward. There's maybe a little touch of like fresh green apple or something sitting above that, and that builds a good bridge between the fruits and the sort of piney resins and the kind of spruce tip flavours and things like that. But it's a really nice beer, this one. It finds a really good balance between the kind of sort of bright, could you call it, the kind of, you know, it finds a good bridge with the kind of, between the smoky side of things, the kind of almost fresh character that you get from the kind of spruce tips and pine resins and stuff like that that's in here, and you also get a nice little bit of the green component to it as well. This is a lovely beer. As I said earlier, this is for me the better of the two 30th anniversary releases. It just feels more rounded and more kind of refined, and personally I just like it better. I like that little bit of smokiness, and I like the balance that this beer has. It's a beautifully balanced beer, this one, so it gets a big thumbs up from me. Yeah, I think we've said everything we really need to about the flavour of this beer, so let's just round off with a wee look at the mouthfeel. So yeah, for me, this beer has that, it has got that lovely kind of silky, oily type mouthfeel to it. I'd say that this one, it doesn't feel too heavy though, that's the thing. It's got a lovely oily, silky mouthfeel to it, but I'd say it's kind of top end of mid-bodied at a push. It does feel nice and clean, and again, that's probably the kind of the Scottish water and stuff like that. We're always very, very proud of how good our tap water is here in Scotland. But then, yeah, you also have just that. You also have just this lightness to the beer. It's very, very easy to drink, to be honest with you. But obviously, you're going to sip it and just enjoy the flavour rather than anything. But yeah, for me, you've obviously this is a barrel aged beer, so it's going to have, you're sacrificing a little bit of the mouthfeel to get all these infused flavours that it has, but it works. So for me, as I say, top end of mid-bodied, smooth carbonation, very silky kind of oily mouthfeel. The IBU count and the bitterness in this beer is quite difficult to pick out, because obviously you're getting a bit of dryness and things from the, you are getting a little bit of dryness and stuff from the barrel and things like that, but you're not getting much bitterness from the hops. So I think this is maybe about a 30-ish IBU beer, but with quite a little bit of dryness to it, and that comes out a bit more the further you go into the aftertaste. So I've said the malty side of things, you've got the barrel underneath, the smoothness, the spirit in there as well, and then you've got a lovely kind of bready type character coming out of this one in the middle, the kind of pine resiny notes in the top, and then you've just got that sweeter brown sugary character coming out of it too. So yeah, I really do like how this one pieces together in that particular sense. So yeah, for me, I would say the fruity side of the beer is nice and kind of oily for sure. Yeah, so lovely kind of oily type character coming out of it. Nice dry fruity notes, definitely. And then, as I say, you do get a little bit of a hoppy presence to this one, and that builds a good bridge with the kind of pine resins and things like that. But yeah, the fruity, the way that everything goes together. I mean, that little bit of fresh green apple, the kind of piney resinous notes from the spruce tips and so on. And then also the kind of green component that the beer has. So this is a really, really unique beer, and it finds a really, really good balance to the flavour. I can't really compliment this one enough, but it's definitely a sipper. It covers its alcohol very well. You just get a little bit of warmth down here in the chest. But yeah, you will enjoy this one. And as I say, this is the better of the two 30th anniversary releases for me from Williams Brothers. So it gets a massive thumbs up, actually. And I think, yeah, they've done a great job of this. So I think we can leave it at that for this one, actually. I think that's everything we need to say about this beer. A really nice, lovely, oily and slick beer, but just with a lovely, it's got a good bit of sweetness to it and a bit of dryness and a bit of that freshness because of the presence of the spruce tips and so on. But beautiful stuff, and definitely probably this could well be my favourite beer that I've had from Williams Brothers. I think I would go that far with this one. This is awesome. This is very, very good. So yeah, I think we can leave it at that. So this was the Alba 30th Anniversary Barrel Aged Edition, or Expression 2022, whatever they're calling it. I do still need to check the titles that I should put on these videos in any case. But yeah, this was an 11% spruce tip, pine needle, whatever you want to call it, Scots pine ale, I guess is what I've seen Alba being called before. But a big barrel aged beast of a beer, based on a historic recipe from Williams Brothers Brewing Company in Alloa in Clackmannanshire here in the heart of Scotland. So yeah, once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Williams Brothers Brewing Company as well are. And we will no doubt return to these guys again at some point in the very near future. But until then, check out my social media, check out theirs, and I will see you guys in the next one. This has been a joy to review this, so if you can get a bottle of it, I highly recommend that you do. Slàinte, skål, cheers, and see you guys in the next review.